Now we're going to move on to one of the big ones. This is an overview of the inspector mode for the level editor for Bark and Butter. I'm Murder, the person who made the level editor. So the first thing you'll note is I have a nice little node inspector here that gives you some of the objects, some of the properties of the object that's clicked over here in the tree, or you can actually select things from the viewer here as well, and you should be able to multi-select. Yeah, you can multi-select. It's just a little buggy as to how it does it right now in the viewport. So I'll need to work on that. That's not that big a problem. So these also aren't all of the properties. You can press F and then reload the object, and now you'll also see stuff like process mode and all this kind of stuff, and visibility range. If you are familiar with Godot and you want to do a lot of custom stuff, you might need access to some of those, but I have also hidden a lot of those so that it's a lot easier for you to tell what's happening. So now that I'm in inspector mode, I'll show you how to reparent stuff actually first. So first of all, I can rename stuff by double clicking, and this little thing will pop up, and now I can call this like Rock 3, I don't really care, and it'll be renamed. I can also child stuff by clicking and dragging, and that will drag things into here. I can also kind of change where things are going to be. Hopefully, there we go. I managed to put that above instead of, so nope, I managed to put it down below. Okay, the changing the order isn't working. That's not a big deal. I can work on that later. The ordering is only important, well, one, for aesthetic reasons, but for some scripting reasons. So you usually don't need to pay too much attention to that. And I promised to show you a way to do an arbitrary collision in the earlier video, so let's go do this. I go down to where its mesh is, and I say make collision from mesh. If we go down to this now, you can see it's created a static body, and it's also created a collision. I have a useful little visualizer here, which will show you exactly what the collision is. You know, that normally the collision would be invisible. So now you can see that I've done that. You can also, once I'm here in custom collision, go to the collision state, you can make a primitive. Now, the main case you're going to see that for is if I want to make a cylinder for some reason, because the cylinder might be good when I'm looking at trees like this. Let's go back to object mode. Let's place down a pine, and then I can talk about why. So let's click on this tree and let us make a collision from mesh. Now, you can see the problem with this collision is that I'm going to run into the trees, into the leaves and the branches as hard as I would into the trunk. Usually that's not really what you want from trees. So what I would do instead is I would actually make this a cylinder, and specifically a cylinder. Let's actually place this back under the tree, and I would increase its height here to be something like 10. And its radius to be maybe 0.2. Let's refresh it and see what that is. And that looks about right. It's just not lined up with the tree because the tree's got a slight lean. So we could, if this gives me my rotation gizmo back, please. There we go. Could just line that up a little bit better with it. And now I have collision on this tree where you will only collide with the trunk and nothing else. Although I will note, okay, this is something I didn't think of when I was making all these things. These collision layers need to be equal to 3 in order for you to collide with them. That's activating bits 1 and bits 2. So I will need to show that to, what's his face? Penguin Milk, and make sure that gets fixed. Okay. Now you also can add nodes. For the most part, this isn't something you need to pay attention to if you're just a casual map maker. You can use just the object mode to import your custom meshes and that. But if you're doing complex stuff as a map maker, you will very much want some of these nodes. Likewise, another advanced thing is that I can go into the signals here, and if you click on any of these signals, it'll select a node to connect to, and then it'll pop up all the functions from that node. So this isn't quite perfect in the sense that you can't bind additional arguments to it, but this is most of what you need for a script. You can also connect signals via script, so this isn't the end of the world. And you can also remove signals that way, that have been defined that way if you like. Removing, of course, is as easy as removing a node. And that's just it. If you want to change any of the sky details, we use Sky 3D, which comes to us from the folks over at Toki-san Games, who are also responsible for Terrain 3D, which is another wonderful terrain plugin. We use TerraBrush because it already has an editor that works at runtime, whereas with Terrain 3D, if I wanted to do that for the editor, the level editor, I would need to have implemented almost all the UI over myself, which I wasn't too hot on doing. And Penguin Milk didn't want to hire me for all those extra hours. Limited amount of options. So the other thing that I want to point out here, besides all the things I pointed out so far, is TerraBrush options. So this is essentially access to the TerraBrush node, and I've just included it here so that the inspector will give you access to everything. So I can show you, for example, all of the textures here, and I can also do another thing where I add another one here. By default, in order to get the right, the right typing, it's just going to copy the first element in the array. I need to make that better so that it's capable of adding the right empty type of object to it so that an empty node, an empty array is able to be formed. But here is just all the extra stuff. I'm just going to load up something incorrect for the second to show you what can happen. Let me go to one of my other projects and just load anything. This is going to turn the entire terrain black, because it's going to be a different format than the stuff that's already in there. It might be a .png, but it's, first of all, I know that this isn't the right size. All the rest of things I believe are 124 by 1024 by 1024, and this is 512 by 512, but it also has a different compression on it. TerraBrush isn't too picky about what types of compression or anything you use, but every texture needs to have the same compression on it, as well as the same file format and whatnot, in order for it to use them. So if I go into the error log, you will actually see that reflected. Here it's complaining about height BMP, because it's only the height in the first one here. Nope. Groomed, it's the second one. It's complaining about this height one here, so that wasn't contributing anything. You can see that clearing did nothing to the height of this here because it was the wrong format. But if I have it in the albedo or normal texture, it's just going to black out instead because it's not going to be able to read any of the albedo formats when it doesn't know what's happening there. And you can see that these are... Oh, there's some extra errors here. I need to check those out when I get later. Okay. So... you'll see some errors like that. You can look up what expected format 17.5 means. You can see what 17 and 5 means if you link to the Godot docs if you really want to. Otherwise, if you're taking all of your textures from the same source, you will more or less be getting all the same formats anyways. I'd be very surprised if you didn't. This is also where you can define the snow and water, where you can define the zones, where you can define the objects. Where are the objects? Right now, it is all expanded. Here I can define the foliages, here I can define the objects. I think, actually, because I didn't define any foliages, it will be difficult for you to define foliages. So I need to do that as default, at least until I get the proper array thing stuff working. And I also want to show you how to delete zones. So right now I have a lot of extra zones. Let's say I don't want this zone. So let's go to one of these, and we can see that that's 0, -1. I know from experience that this is 0, 0, and this will be 0, -1, because it's in the -1 direction. It's in the negative direction of this axis. So if I move this Y down, this should move further away. Okay, the Y-axis is that one, and I was wrong. So you can see which one it is just by kind of moving it, and then you can decide to click this button here with a nice big X, which will delete it, and update TerraBrush, which gets rid of it. So that is how you actually delete a zone from TerraBrush. And I think that's about all I have to say about the inspector. Again, just a brief technical overview. Oh, no, it is not, because I want to show you slope mode and explain a bit about that, and I want to explain the respawn point. So you need a node 3D of some kind called respawn point that is a child of scene, because that's where the level is going to decide to drop the player. Otherwise, it just drops it 1,000 units above the origin, so a kilometer above the origin, which might involve a lot of falling or might involve you being below the hill, depending on how you've made it. So right now I just have the 3D gizmo. I can also go into local mode. It didn't change anything because it has no rotation. Now it did. So global mode, it's just going to be pointing in the global north and global west, whatnot, global east. If I put it into local mode, it depends on how this has been rotated. If I rotate this back, this entire thing is going to lean back. And then I have slope mode, which attempts to follow the slope of the hill. So this is great for trying to place stuff precisely on the slope and not having to fight with either, local or global, and to be like, all right, but now it needs to be closer, but now it needs to come out this way, and now it needs to be closer. Slope mode will just automatically follow the slope of it. It won't automatically rotate the object. I'm still leaving that up to you. But it's a hell of a lot better for trying to move stuff around hills and inclines and all that kind of stuff. So that's just the main reason why I wanted to show you that. All right, and that is now everything about Inspector Mode.